come from Cleveland, Ohio. Married a girl from Borough Park. Was a Rav for 10 years. I experienced a tragedy that I'm going to mention later on. And from that tragedy, my life changed, and I moved to California, where I became the rabbi at UCLA. And then the next few years, I opened up campus programs, first across California, then across the country. And today, one of my jobs is I go from campus to campus, training in rabbis from Harvard to Yale to Princeton to UPenn to GW, Berkeley, Stony Brook, Binghamton I go to, definitely. Wherever there are Jews, which is pretty much everywhere, I go and I travel. About 10 years ago, our family moved back to the East Coast, and I live in New York, I live in Muncie. And I still travel from Sunday night, Monday until Friday. And when I come home, we are honored to have a Shabbaton every single week at the house where people can come and enjoy and feel Shabbat the way it's supposed to be felt. As a matter of fact, I was looking around and there's some people who were here last week who came to us for Shabbat. My jobs is to interview rabbis for campuses, for campus life. Now, to really understand this, you have to appreciate that if a young man and his family move on to a campus, they essentially become the rabbi of the entire campus. So if a campus has 4,000 Jews, 5,000 Jewish students, I tell the rabbi, you have a very big congregation. Like, how many people have a congregation of 5,000? And if you live in Gainesville, Florida, your congregation is 7,000. It's a very big responsibility. And therefore, it led me to ask the following question. What makes a leader a leader? What character traits do I look for when I interview someone? What is the future manhig, the future leader of Binghamton look like? Or Kansas State? Or UAlbany? What does a leadership, what does it entail? And if I were to go around the room and ask you, what makes a leader a leader? Or if I were to ask you a different question, how many people here are leaders? You can raise your hand, a little interactive. One person is a leader. 2 people are leaders. So the rest of you would be followers. The truth of the matter is, if you're a parent, you're a leader. If you have children, they look up to you, they analyze your every move, and if you do the right thing, you're a leader. And if you do the wrong thing, you're still a leader, and they will follow you and they will learn from you. However, that's not the kind of leadership we are referring to. We're talking about leading people, many people. So what does it take to be a leader? What character trait? So again, if I were to ask you, you may say honesty. You may say charisma, thoughtfulness, a good listener. Humility, a huge one. Humility, like our president, right? Well, there a lot of humbleness. Moshe Rabbeinu, Nachon, right? What does it take to be a leader? So I want to mention one character trait that I, in particular, look for when it comes to leadership. It's not the only character trait that exists for leadership, but it's one that I look for. I believe that the world is made up of 2 kinds of people. And perhaps this room is made up of 2 kinds of people. And we call those people givers and takers. Givers and takers. Now, I don't know who's who. You all look like wonderful people. But the world is made of givers and takers. And when I interview, when I look for the next leader on a college campus, the next leader of a shul, the next leader in her class, in his yeshiva, in a corporation, I look for somebody who enjoys the act of giving rather than the act of taking. Now, I like sayings. My dear mother used to take little sayings and put them up on the refrigerator. So here's one of my favorite sayings. The world is made of givers and takers. The takers eat better, but the givers sleep better. I like that. Is the world a better place because of you? You see, we all give and we all take. There's no question about that. We all do both. But when you strip yourself down to your essence, you ask yourself what animates you, what inspires you, what makes you wake up in the morning, what puts a smile on your face. Is it the act of receiving, or is it the act of giving and benefiting others? I look for somebody who enjoys the act of giving. Now, when we are born, are we givers or are we takers? A little child is a giver or a taker. Every little child is a taker. Your little baby, first words you say, mine, me, gimme. That's okay. That's a little child trying to carve a little space for itself on planet Earth. That's okay. A little child could do that. What about a 10-year-old? Is a 10-year-old a giver or a taker? They're still takers. I mean, if you have a 10-year-old who's a giver, that's lovely, but they're a freak, right? All you got to do is take a piece of birthday cake or take a whole cake and cut it up into slices and see if they don't all run for the piece with the flour. You probably still do, don't you? Right? We all want that piece of the taking. A 10-year-old is a taker. A 10-year-old still takes. And then we get to be a little bit older. 14, 15, 17, 19. We begin to learn that there's a bigger world out there and there are people suffering and we can make a difference in their lives. And then some people begin to transition from being takers to being givers. They transition to becoming givers. Does everyone in the world transition to being a giver? Does everyone become a giver? Does half the world become givers? Probably not. Most of the world is born, they grow up, they live, and they die as takers. They're the ones that don't let you merge on the highway, even though you're clearly trying to get through the lane, or you're about to park. That never happened to you, did it? You're about to park and you pull your car forward, and then they just zip in. You were clearly trying to park, but it's their world. You just happen to be visiting. They're the same people that take 22 items in a 10-item or less aisle. You know those people. It's not just bad midos. They are takers. They never learned to give. Giving is hard. Giving is tough. Here's another nice saying, beautiful saying. The world is made of givers and takers. The givers, they sometimes have to take, but they're only taking because they want to give back. And the takers, they sometimes give, but there's an agenda to that. They're only giving because they want to take back. Giving is tough. It's so tough that the Rambam says in his Pirush Mishnayos Rambam, and you've all heard this, that if a person has a choice, I can give $1,000 in one shot or $1 at a time. What is better? What is better? Is it better to give $1,000 in one shot or $1 at a time? And the Rambam says one at a time. You know why? Why one at a time? You're going to give the same amount. The answer is because you're exercising a muscle. It's called the giving muscle. It's a hard muscle. It's a difficult muscle. It looks like this. This is what the workout looks like. In and out. In. That's a heavy workout. That's heavier than 100 pounds. In there, in the pocket, take out the wallet, give and take. That's hard. You ever been to the kotel? And you get knocked every 2 seconds, and you're so annoyed and you think, oh, why don't you get a job? Right? Didn't I see you here yesterday? And the day before, you know, they've been there for 45 years. Right? Slicha. And it's hard. It's hard to give. Giving is difficult. And if you haven't worked on becoming a giver, you can assume you're not. You may be a little bit of a giver. You may be born with a proclivity to give. But if you haven't broken yourself to give, because giving is not natural. It's natural to take. It's natural to hoard. It's natural to grab and to become wealthy with material goods. But to give, why should I give? You know, it's strange. I am not a natural giver. I find giving hard. I still want that piece of cake with the flour on it. I still do. I find giving hard. I work on it. And really my life is difficult because I happen to be married to a giver. My wife is a crazy giver. She's not crazy, she's a wonderful giver. But I stare at her day after day, giving. Anyone who's just met my wife, they know she makes, we have almost 100 people a week. We had almost 100 people this week for Shabbos. She makes 300 meals a week. 300 meals every week. Right? Some people complain when they got to make a Thanksgiving or a little Hanukkah Masih with 20 people. She makes 300 meals a week without boo, without a word. She has this little thing, like she likes to get up before me so she can help me get up by making me a coffee. That's her giving. She makes me a coffee. And if I'm such a lazy good for nothing that I take it and I drink it and I fall back asleep, when I wake up, there's another coffee there. Almost every morning. And yeah, that's it. So Shabbos morning, when she sleeps in, that's the one day she knows she gets her coffee. But life is tough. Life is tough when you recognize how far you are from becoming the giver that you could be. The amazing people in the world. When I was a Rav, I did a lot of levayas, especially my second gig, 7 years in Brooklyn, 3 years in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. And I did a lot of levayas, not too many brisim. I'm a mile also, but I didn't do too many brisim because it was an older crowd. And I remember once a fellow passed away, and when that fellow passed away, nobody had anything to say about him because he lived a taking life. So his rabbi, because he was from a different place, his rabbi gets up and said, Marvin loved life. He loved it. He loved it. Just did things because he loved it. And I'm thinking, did he love people? Was he helpful? Was he considerate? Was he generous? Was he kind? Was he thoughtful? Did he visit the sick? Did he give tzedakah? He loved life. Who doesn't love life? Hopefully you all love life. But that's not greatness. That's just taking. Tell you a little story. So I used to be an art dealer. On the side, I collected art and I would sell art. And this way, even though my main job was kiruv, I'd reach out. But because I knew a lot about Jewish art, I became a little bit of an expert. And by getting that expertise, I was able to buy and sell on the side. And, you know, it was a lot of fun. I grew passionate. Now, there was one kind of art I stayed far away from. And that's called Holocaust art. Now, what Holocaust art is the subject of a great debate. Is Holocaust art Holocaust imagery, a picture of the Holocaust? Is Holocaust art by a Holocaust survivor? Is Holocaust art made during the Holocaust? Like what makes Holocaust art? But it goes for a lot of money, but I didn't want these morbid images in my house. But eventually I got used to the idea. And actually, actually, it meant something to me, because we're not all happy rabbis and little kids reading the Torah. We've gone through a lot. We have a colored, and sometimes the color is red, a colored background, a colored tragic history. And I wanted that memorialized in imagery as well. And I shifted, and I actually began collecting these really amazing, haunting pieces. So one day, go onto eBay, and I see an ad, and the ad reads, "For sale, a sketchbook drawn during the Holocaust." A whole sketchbook? I mean, every page has another sketch. Well, then I saw the pictures. I was blown away, because this sketchbook wasn't just a sketchbook. This sketchbook, every page had a picture of another person, and the artist, who was an amazing artist, was a lady. She wrote when, what date the person died, who they were. Some of the pages were watercolors, including a watercolor of the camp that she was in called Theresienstadt. Amazing, haunting pictures. The whole book was Holocaust art. And on the front cover of the book was a black and white of the artist together with her family. And on the back cover of the sketchbook, somehow this lady got a piece of Hitler's stationery when he was a private. That was during World War I. She got a piece of Hitler's stationery. She glued it onto the back, and she wrote in Hebrew, "And yet we survived." She wrote on Hitler's stationery. There was also a little stamp from Himmler also there. It was a crazy piece. You never see pieces like that. And me being an art collector, I decided, whatever this goes for, I have to win this. It's so powerful. And so I bid on the auction. I remember I was at a wedding, so I kept on running out of the chuppah to bid. And I ended up getting it for what could be considered artistically a steal. I bought the entire book for $1,000. Now you should understand, in the world where people collect these kind of things, I could have ripped out every page and sold it for $1,000. I was very happy. It was a real powerful piece, and we cherished it at home. Alas, we have a lot of children, 11 Kanai Nahara. I have 11 children and 7 grandchildren. Baruch Hashem, I'm a grandpa. Yeah. That's what the glasses are for. So, one day, this lady from Los Angeles, her name is Sandy. Sandy says, I collect Holocaust art, and I knew about her. She's a very wealthy lady. Next time you're in LA, I'd love to see your pieces. I was invited to go and do a wedding in Los Angeles, so I brought with me this book. I come to her house before the wedding, ring the door, and I come and she's got a whole room that's a shrine to Holocaust art and also art from the War of Independence in Israel. Everywhere, posters and signs, just amazing historic stuff all over the wall. She leafs through this sketchbook and she says, "How much?" Now, I was not expecting it to go that quick. I like to kibitz. I was going to kibitz. She says, "How much?" So I said, the first number that came to my mind, I said, 25,000. And she says, okay. And she takes out her checkbook. And I felt bad that I didn't ask for 50. Anyhow, she takes it, she writes it out for 25,000. And I'm driving home and I'm sort of deliriously happy. You know how many tuitions? That's a few tuitions. I called my wife, I said, hey, you know what? We just sold it, bought it for 1,000, 25,000, gonna pay tuition. So my wife's first words to me were, great, who should I make out the Meiser check to? 10% of the money. I want the check to be in the mail before you even arrive home. I want to make a $2,500 check to somewhere, some stuck. We're not wealthy people. And the first thought in my mind was, oh, like, yeah, I mean, I would give Meiser my 100, my 1,000, 25,000. I said, wow, in my mind, whoever's happy with 2,500 would be very joyous to get a $1,000 check in the mail. Because giving is hard. It's hard. Nobody likes to give. Nobody wants to give. It's hard to give. You have to train yourself to be a giver. And if you're not trained, then you're not. Now, there are a lot of things that you can give. You can give money, but what if you don't have money? I got a very sad phone call on the way to this talk. It's a very sad phone call. Person, very dignified, essentially lost everything. And they just decided, they had seen a video that had just come out about our family this past week. So they took a chance and they drove over to my house. But of course I wasn't home. I was on my way here. So they said, can I have a few minutes of your time? And they call me and they tell me this incredibly sad story. Person in the community lost everything. And the bank says, if by Tisha B'Av you don't have your mortgage, you're out of the house. So they want to know, do you have $2,300? I said, I don't. Barely making our own ends meet. Plus we have the Shabbat.com. We're trying to make sure it doesn't collapse. I said, but I will help you other ways. And I told him 2 ways that I can help him. I'll spread the word. I use my social network. I do connections. I said, send me a letter. I'll give you phone numbers. We don't always have lots of money to give away. But I think just listening to him, and it was a good 25 minutes that he spoke, it already puts a little Novocaine. It already is a balm for the wounds of a person who doesn't know where to turn. We can give time. Time is a form of giving. How many of us wish we had spent more time with our children growing up? You know, it's the #1 regret of men in America. They took a poll. What's the #1 regret? You did not spend enough time with your kids. I'm sure you all know the story of the kid who says to his father, Dad, I want to play with you. I don't have time. Can I go out with you? Every day, didn't have time. Finally, the kid says, Dad, what do? You don't have time. What do you do? He says, I'm a lawyer. He says, oh, and what do you get paid? And the father says, I don't tell my kids what I get paid. No, Dad, what do you get paid? And he's bugging and he's nudging. And finally, the father says, okay, I get paid $150 an hour. The child runs out of the room and comes back into the dining room with his piggy bank. And he breaks it open and pushes the change to his father and says, here, take this. How much time will this buy me? I want to spend time with my father. My father's, of course, embarrassed. But that's how it is. We don't spend enough time. We don't spend enough time appreciating the world that Hashem gave us. We're in such a rush. Here's a beautiful saying. When we're young, we spend all of our time trying to make money. And then when we get to be older, we start spending all of our money to get a little more time. That makes no sense. We're young, we give up our 20s and our 30s and our 40s running to make money. And then we're older, suddenly we realize how valuable time is. So we have to make up for lost time by spending the money that we spent our youth making. Smell those roses. Remember who made the roses. You can give many things. You can give advice. I had a poor person come to me. It was a simple story. He says, Rabbi, I need you to help me. I said, I love you, but you come to me every month. What do you do for Parnasa? I don't have Parnasa. I said, I'll make you a deal. I will raise money and will pay for you to have lessons in Safrut. So you learn to be a sofer. He said, I would love that. Now, not only is he a sofer, but he has the dignity of his wife and his kids. They're so proud of their father as a sofer. Right? You know the old saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. These are things that we can do besides money. Give. What about love? Is love a form of giving? Is loving giving? Absolutely. How do you say love in Hebrew? It's ahava. Ahava comes from the word hav, which means give. My students are always stunned when they hear this. Loving and giving is the same thing? I said, oh, it's more than the same thing. If you understand this, you'll always get a job. I tell them, I'll give you a secret to get a job. You want to hear how we get jobs? By looking at the word ahava. If any of you are looking for a job, here's the little secret. Ahava is different than the way they teach you to love in the secular world. Love is not you complete me. Love is not how you make me feel. Love is me giving you. So if you want someone to love you, give them the chance to give you. Because by them giving you, they will love you. My mother used to drive me crazy when I was young. I used to invite friends over, and she used to say to the friends, oh, come help us set the table. And I'm like, Mom, don't make them set the table. They're my guest. She said, no, they'll love you more if they invest in the relationship. Like, what? She says, yeah. And they loved my mother. They loved her because she'd give them a little something to do. When I was at college, Rabbi, a father calls me up and says, Rabbi, what am I doing wrong? I gave my kid everything. I gave him a beautiful birthday when he turned 16. I gave the best schools. I bought him a car when he graduated. He's in a top college. I paid for the good dorm, and he doesn't even pick up the phone. What am I doing wrong? I said, should I be honest with you? I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. You're doing all the giving, so you're doing all the loving. You should have given him a chance to give you. Give him a chance to give you. He will love you for that. That's the way it works. Ahava. You know the cliche of the lady in the Wild West, and she sees a man from the distance, so she drops a little handkerchief on purpose by accident, and he comes and he runs and he picks up and says, pardon me, ma'am, you dropped this handkerchief? Why did she do that? Because she understands that if she wants the guy, she's got to give the guy a chance to give her something. How's that going to help you get a job? It's very simple. Next time you go for an interview and they offer you coffee or a water or something, always say yes. And if you can make them a little crazy, it's better. Do you have Splenda? You got a low-fat milk? The more you make them do for you before the interview begins, the better the chance you're going to get that job. But we don't do that. We say, oh, no, it's okay, thank you. No, thank you. You blew it. Let them invest in the relationship. When I was in UCLA, so I was once driving into my driveway. I had a sort of a narrow driveway, and there was a student named Mark from AEPI. He was part of the Jewish fraternity. And as I'm pulling in, I say, Mark, can you help me get in the driveway? He says, sure, Rabbi. Okay, right, left, okay, stop here. I said, thank you, Mark. Anytime, Rabbi. And he walks away, and my kid, who's sitting in the back, he says, I know what you were doing. I said, what? He said, you just wanted him to invest, didn't you? I said, it's exactly. I always pull into my driveway. I didn't need him to help me, but he was a boy I hadn't been able to connect with. So I needed 30 seconds of his time. He should invest a little. And I felt if he invests, we're going to be able to have a good relationship. I'll tell you a little story. There was a man who's driving home from work one day, and he hears on the radio a concept called breakfast for supper. Now, breakfast for supper is what they do in Israel and in a lot of places in Europe. And what it is that the main meal is lunch, and supper is like breakfast. It's a light meal, right? In Israel, what's the big meal? It's lunch, right? And the radio talk show host was saying that this is great policy, because if the main meal is lunch, you could work it off. You take a nice little supper, light supper, then you go to sleep. But in America, what do? We have the big meal for supper, hamburgers and hot dogs and meatloaf, and then we sit down in front of our computers, and we're feeling all bloated. Then we go to sleep, and it just sits there. Ugh. It just sits and sits, and that's why we have obesity issues, because we don't have a chance to work it off. So the radio talk show said, you want to really feel better about yourself, do breakfast for supper. So the guy comes home, and he says to his wife, he says, honey, did you make supper yet? She says, no, I was about to. He says, I heard about this idea of breakfast for supper. So he says, well, why don't we do this breakfast for supper thing? She says, sure, what would you like? So the man comes home and the man says to his wife, honey, did you make supper yet? She says, no, what would you like? And he says, how about oatmeal? How about oatmeal? She says, that's all you wanted, oatmeal? Yeah, oatmeal's a breakfast. We'll have oatmeal for supper. So she's very happy because how hard is it to make oatmeal? You boil up a pot of water, you dump in the flakes, and bada bing, bada boom. You've got oatmeal. It's great. So the mother makes oatmeal. It's great. Little Lisa walks in. Lisa's an 11-year-old girl. And Lisa says, Mommy, what's for supper? And the mother says, oh, today we're all eating oatmeal. And she says, what? I don't like oatmeal. Can I have something different? So the father, what does he do? He walks right into the kitchen and says to Lisa, no, today we're all eating oatmeal as a family. Now, us fathers do that. We put the words as a family at the end of any sentence to make it legit. Did you ever notice that? I tell my kids, today we're all tying our shoes as a family. So if you don't want to be ostracized, tie your shoes, right? Today we're trying out breakfast for supper as a family. So if you don't like it, I can't help you. The mother sits down with the father and little Lisa, and they begin to eat the oatmeal, but Lisa doesn't touch it. And she's there, and she's like sitting there with her arms folded, and the mother says, try it, try it. The mother says, you'll like it. You put a little brown sugar, you put a little butter, it can taste good. And Lisa says, Mom, I don't like oatmeal. I've tried it before. Why can't we be normal like every other family and have chicken and rice? Why are we eating oatmeal for supper? It doesn't make sense. So the father jumps in. He says, because we're doing it as a family. So that's what's happening. And if you don't like it, you don't have to eat. So 10 more minutes go by. And the father's up to his fourth bowl, which probably kills the idea. But meanwhile, Lisa's sitting there and she's not touching the oatmeal. And the mother's annoyed, not at Lisa, but the mother's annoyed at the father. Like, Lisa doesn't deserve to starve because you had this brilliant idea of breakfast for supper. So the mother gives the father like a little kick under the table. The mother says, you know, could you make this better? So the father knows he's going to be in trouble. He's got to make this better. So he turns to Lisa and says, I'll tell you what, Lisa, I'll make you a deal. If you eat the bowl of oatmeal, I will let you make a request. You could ask for something. And Lisa says, anything? Yeah, you could ask for whatever. She's a normal little girl. She's not going to ask for a car. She's 11 years old. So Lisa says, okay. And she takes a spoon and she shovels it into the oatmeal, puts it into her mouth, makes the requisite awful face, like, I don't like this. But she finishes the entire bowl of oatmeal. She turns it over. Is he all done? And the father says, was it really so bad? And Lisa says, yeah. But now I can ask for something, right? And the father says, yes. What would you like? And Lisa says, okay, I would like you to shave off all my hair. And Lisa's like, the father's like, excuse me? And the mother's eyes, but yes, I'd like you to shave off all my hair. So the mother says to the father, can I have a word with you in the living room? Can we just come a moment in the living room? They come into the living room, and the mother, hoarse, whispers, yells at the father, what were you thinking? You could ask for anything. You can't tell an 11-year-old to ask for anything. What if she would want to go to Disneyland tomorrow? You would have brought her? Excuse me, but our daughter has beautiful, nice blonde hair, and you are not touching her hair. Can you make this better? And the father says, don't worry, I got this, which means he doesn't. The father walks back in, leans over to Lisa and says, Lisa, I have an idea. How about a bike? And Lisa says, oh, you're going back on your word, right? Because you said I could ask for whatever I want, and you now are changing your mind. And the father says, no, you want me to shave off all your hair? I will do it right now. I will do it now. But I figure if I shave off your hair, in a few minutes, a few days, the hair is going to grow back. After a few weeks, you'll have nothing. I get you a bike. You got a good sturdy bike. Don't you want a good sturdy bike? And Lisa says, no, Dad, I know hair grows back. I want you to shave off all my hair. So the father says to Lisa, okay, Lisa, you want me to shave off your hair? I'm going to do it right now. Let's go upstairs and let's do it. And Lisa says, okay, I'm going. And she runs up the stairs, and Lisa's mother and father are now staring at each other. They're not sure what to do. And Lisa's father says, you know what? I'll go upstairs. I am sure she will not let me shave off her hair. She's just trying to teach me a lesson because I made her eat the oatmeal. Watch, you'll see. And she goes, he goes up the stairs, and he goes to her bedroom waiting for Lisa to laugh and say, okay, I wasn't serious. But Lisa wasn't in her bedroom. He goes to the bathroom, and Lisa is sitting there on a stool with the apron, with the clippers plugged in. She is ready, willing, and able for the father to begin his haircut. The father's not sure what to do. So he takes the clippers, takes a few strands of her hair, and clips them off and says, dangles them in front of her eyes. You see, you think you're playing. I'm not playing. I will do this thing right now. So you want to call it off? Call it off now. Lisa says, I'm not going to call it off. That's really what I want. This is called checkmate. What do? You told your kid you're gonna cut off the hair if they listen. You gotta, and he's holding the clippers. So what else is supposed? That's man logic. I'm holding the clippers. What else can I do? And he takes the clippers, and from the nape of her neck all the way till her eyebrows, he begins to shave off rows of her hair all the way down to their roots, one row after the next. And Lisa is watching with delight in the mirror as the father makes her bald. And then the father says, is this really what you wanted? She said, almost, but I still feel prickers. Can we get rid of the prickers? I want it to be smooth. He says, Lisa, you're killing me, but okay. And he takes out the electric shaver, and he shaves her head. She looks like a little Charles Barkley, like an egg, smooth and clean. You can see her reflection in it. And when he's all finished, she's so excited. She comes running down the stairs. Mom, look what Dad did. She shaved off all my hair. Look. And there's yelling and there's screaming, pandemonium in the house. And the father slept on the couch. The next day, the father is sitting eating breakfast, and little Lisa comes walking down, and he looks at her wearing her yellow dress and her bald head, and he thinks to himself, oh my goodness, she's going to come on the bus, and you know what the kids are going to do to her? They're going to torture her. He says to her, Lisa, you know what? Do you want? I'll drive you to school. You shouldn't have to take the bus. And Lisa says, no problem, I'd love that. So he drives her 15 blocks to school, and she's about to jump out of the car and go to the school building when he whirls around and hands her a baseball cap and says, here, take that, looks good, take the baseball cap. And she says, no, it's okay, Dad, I like this, thank you, I love you, bye-bye. And she blows him a kiss, and she begins to skip towards the school building with the yellow dress and the bald head blowing in the wind. The dress was blowing in the wind, not the head. And as he looks at his daughter skipping towards the school building, he looks at her and he says, how in the world did breakfast for supper become bald-headed little girl? Like, I don't even remember the steps. And he really felt bad. He's about to drive away when the car behind him pulls up, and there's a mother driving it, and there's a little girl that jumps out, and she too has her hair shaved off. And she comes running to Lisa and they go, ah! And they hug each other, and the father is looking at them, and he says, this is just an awful trend, like little girly skinheads. Like, what in the world is going on? He's about to drive away again when the mother who was driving the other car, she comes out. He rolls down his window, she bends over and she says, excuse me, is that your little girl in the yellow dress? Is that your daughter? He says, yeah, that's her. She says, I want to tell you something about your daughter. Your daughter, you should know, is an angel of God. I hope you appreciate that. And he says, excuse me, I don't know what you mean. She says, your daughter's an angel of God. You see, my daughter is in your daughter's class. And a few months ago, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she began treatments, chemo, radiation, a lot of pain, and her hair fell out. She kept going to school. But you know how 11-year-olds can be so cruel. They don't understand what does it mean to have a life-threatening illness. So they would bully her. So not only is she struggling to survive, but she comes back home each day bullied. And about a month ago, she came home with tears in her eyes. She says, Ma, I can't do it anymore. And I look at her and I said, you don't have to. And I have not sent her to school in a month. She doesn't even get dressed. She stays in her bedroom crying how ugly she is and how she wishes she was dead and no one cares about her. All until last night, when my daughter got a call from your daughter Lisa. And your daughter said, listen, the kids in the class, they did not understand what they were doing to you, but they do now. They've been made to understand and they feel terrible. They feel so bad. Please come back to school. We really want you. And listen, don't worry about not having hair. I don't have hair anymore either. We could be like twins. My daughter said, you don't have hair? No, I don't. And this morning, my daughter came downstairs fully dressed. And I looked into her eyes and I saw life for the first time in a long time. Your daughter may have saved my daughter's life. Your daughter is an angel of God. There's so many ways to give. I'm going to share something with you that's ultra personal. You know, we pick up the phone when the phone rings. And most phone calls are mundane. But sometimes we pick up the phone and by the time we put it down, we know our lives are changed forever. That phone call was a life-changing phone call. So I want to tell you about my life-changing phone call. It was a Motzei Shabbos, a Saturday night. I had just run a Shabbaton. I was very exhausted. I remember collapsing into my bed. I think I may have even had my shoes on. I just collapsed, so tired. And the phone rings. It's about 10:30 at night. And my sister, Devorah, is on the other end of the phone. And she is weeping and crying and yelling into the phone. And I could not understand what she was saying. I said, Devorah, you've got to calm down. You're scaring me. What happened? Something terrible. What happened? Calm down, please. She said, Gavriel, something happened to Gavriel. Now you have to understand, I'm one of 9 children. I have an older sister, the one who made the phone call. Her name is Devorah. And then immediately there were 3 boys born 1 year apart. 3 boys in 3 years. My name is Benzion. The middle brother is Raphael. And then the last brother is Gavriel. 3 boys in 3 years. And then there were 4 girls and then a baby boy at the end. And us 3 were very close. We were so close growing up in Cleveland. People used to call us the 3 Musketeers. We went around making trouble. We weren't necessarily great kids, but who cares? We had fun. We had a club called the Daredevil Club. We would challenge each other to do dangerous things, exciting things, living on the edge. Everyone knew the 3 Klatzko boys walking around, tearing, painting the town red. And she's crying. She's saying, something happened to Gavriel. Something happened to Gav. I said, what? What do you mean something happened to him? Something happened. He had a heart attack. I said, what are you talking about? Impossible. He's 28. How's that 20? Are you sure? Are you sure? How is he? Where is he? She says, I don't know. I think he's dead. I felt all the oxygen leave my lungs. I said, I have to call you back. And I pick up the phone and I call Musketeer number 2, Raphael, who was living in Yerushalayim. The phone rang once, twice, then he picks it up. I say, Raphael, He responds, I never asked the question. I knew Musketeer number 3 had fallen. How? Why? What? Made no sense. The next day, our family gathered in JFK Airport, and all sorts of friends came to accompany us to Yerushalayim, where there would be a levaya. And the crying was so heavy that they had to give us a separate private room. And then we got onto the plane, and I never forget my father's face during that plane flight to Yerushalayim. How does one react in a 10-hour plane flight to the burial of a child? Impossible. I remember the stewardess was bothering him. Put your armrest up, armrest down, this, that, just like for no reason. And finally my father looks at her and says, please, I'm going to my son's funeral. Would you just please give me a little bit of room? We get to Yerushalayim, and a few hours after we get there was the levaya. And I was not expecting a lot of people. My brother at that time was living in South Africa. He had moved to South Africa 2 years before. He was a young rabbi. He had started an amazing shul called the Sunny Road Synagogue. Beautiful, beautiful shul, started from scratch. But the levaya was going to be in Yerushalayim, so I figured family's going to be there, a few friends who's going to show up at a moment's notice. There were just 3-4 hours from the morning until the levaya. And we come to the levaya, and something unexplainable happened. People began to come en masse, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people from near and far. Over 1,000 people came without almost any notice. And then throughout the Shiva, throughout the 7 days of mourning, there was a line of people snaking up the stairs, waiting to show their respects. The greatest rabbis of the generation, Reb Moshe Sternbach, the Klozemeger Rebbe, came, and the whole time I'm thinking, why? Why are they coming to my kid brother's levaya? And that's when it came out. And if you've lasted until now, you're going to get shaken up. And I was. Because as it turned out, Gavriel, my brother Alav Shalom, was one of the world's great givers. And he did it all secretly. He did it all privately, and none of the family knew about it. But when a person passes away, Acharei Mos Kedoshim Emor, when a person passes away, it all comes out. And it all came tumbling out. Story after story of giving, extraordinary giving. Until today, there are books written about him. There are hundreds of children named after him. And for the last part of my talk, with your indulgence right before Tisha B'Av, I'm going to share with you what came out. Because if this does not inspire you, then nothing will. The first rabbi got up during the Shiva, during the levaya, and he said, you never said it in front of Rav Gav, which is what they called him. You never said in front of Rav Gav, hey, I like your tie. Because his first and only reaction was to take off his tie and give it to you. I like your tie. Well, it's yours then. He trained himself to give. During the Shiva, there were 3 of his friends who came to pay their respects, and I said to them, is it true? He said, I like your tie, he gives it to you. And one of them said, yeah, these are actually his shoes. I said, you came to the Shiva in his shoes? I said, how are you wearing his shoes? He said, you know your brother, he was a good dresser. So I said to him, hey, Gav, nice shoes. So Gav said, they're so comfortable, try them on. And I made the mistake of trying them on. Gav said, how do they feel? They feel great. Well, they're yours. I don't want your shoes, but I want you to have them. He trained himself to give. That was what he was all about. I was in the old city a few years ago, and a lady comes in. I was in the ice cream shop, and a lady comes in, and she says, "Are you Rav Gav's brother?" You know, there is a famous Rav Gav today. That famous Rav Gav Friedman asked permission to name himself Rav Gav because he knew the original Rav Gav was my brother. So she said, "Are you the brother of Rav Gav Klatzko?" I said, "Yeah, I'm his brother." She said, "The most bizarre story just happened to me." She says, "I live in South Africa, and you know, I was looking to hire a maid. And even though apartheid is over, they still have maids, you know, from the black community. So I went to an agency, and I went to interview a maid. And this maid comes to my door, and she's standing there. And after a moment of standing there, suddenly she points at my wall, and she says, holy man, holy man." And I'm like, "What are you looking at?" And I look at my wall, and there is a picture I have of your late brother, who was our rabbi. And I said, "One second, you knew Rav Gav? You knew my brother, Rabbi Klatzko?" She said, "No, I don't know who he is. I just know he's a holy man." "How? How would you know that?" She said, "Well, I was walking with my husband in the street once. We were walking in Johannesburg. We were walking down the street, and we passed this holy man. And I guess my husband looked at his tie as we were passing. We had passed each other about 10 feet when suddenly this man turns around, comes running after us, and says, 'Here, I just want you to have this.'" She says, "Ma'am, we are very poor people. My husband has never owned a tie in his life. And the only tie that he owns is the tie of the holy man." Giving, giving, giving. You know, giving begins at home. Giving begins with your family. A lot of people, they're great givers when it comes to other people, but at home, they're a little bit obnoxious. God understood giving begins at home. And therefore, anytime he got up to speak, and he spoke every Shabbos, his wife says he never once forgot to mention his wife in his talks. Every single talk mentioned his wife. He used to say, "And Yocheved, my wife, the light of my life, the one who teaches me what is good and true, is sitting over here today. And she taught me an amazing thing, and I'd like to share it with everyone." And she would sit there, basking in the glow and recognition that her husband showed her in front of the entire congregation, acknowledging that she was part and parcel of what he was trying to build in Johannesburg. Because that's love. He suffered from terrible migraines, cluster migraines, the worst kind. Sometimes he'd be in the middle of services, in the middle of shul, and suddenly his face would grow pale. The cluster migraines would hit him like a freight train in his brain, and he'd quietly leave the shul. He'd go to his office downstairs, and he'd lie down on the desk in the darkness and in the silence because there was so much pain. And even through that pain, once he came home and his wife saw that he was just smitten with a cluster migraine. But she said, you know, she said to herself, "I didn't have my time with my husband. He's been helping all these people, but I also want a little bit of him." So she said, "I pretended I didn't notice that he had a migraine. Even though I knew, but I pretended I didn't notice because I wanted to speak with him." He didn't say a word. He didn't say, "I can't now, I'm nauseous, I'm feeling awful." I sat with him for 45 minutes. And I told him about my day. And only after I had had my time with him, then he said, "You know, I'm not feeling so well." And he went to lie down. That's a superhero story. Once, he was with his wife in Bnei Brak. He lived in a city called Kiryat Sefer. He went to visit Bnei Brak with his wife. And his wife pointed, you know, they were passing a store, and his wife commented on a little nightgown. Well, when they got back to Kiryat Sefer, they were back for 5-10 minutes. Suddenly, he stepped out for a moment. He grabbed a taxi and went right back to Bnei Brak and bought it for her. He said, "What was I thinking? You liked it. How could I not get it for you?" You see, when giving begins at home, then it could spread with concentric circles outward to encompass everyone. But it starts at home. He was taking a group of students in Israel. He was taking them on a tiyul. And on their way back, they were going up to Yerushalayim. This is before he moved to South Africa. He was a young man. When suddenly he tells the bus, he says, "Please get off on the next exit." And the bus driver says, "Why? We're about 45 minutes out of Jerusalem. Please get off, just for a moment." And the bus driver says, okay, you're the boss. Make a right, now make a left, now stop right here, I'll be right back. And he jumps out of the bus, and then he comes right back, and he says to the bus driver, okay, to Yerushalayim. And the bus driver says, what was that about? Why did we stop? God says, you wouldn't understand. No, really, why? Okay. Each day I spend a few minutes speaking to my wife, letting her know how much I love her. But today was a very busy day. I was with my students and I couldn't. But as we were driving up to Yerushalayim, we passed the exit for Kiryat Sefer. And how in the world can I pass my wife? Can I pass the city where my wife lives and not come in and give her a hug and a kiss? That's all I wanted to do. I just came and gave her a hug and a kiss, and I went back out. You know, I only tell you this because everyone knows the other stories. The other stories are the famous ones, the crazy ones. But I tell you this because the crazy ones don't happen without these stories. The stories of connection with your own family. There was a man who came into the shiva. He was unfortunately morbidly obese. He had a condition. And he got engaged. He didn't have that many friends. So God paid for his vart, the whole vart. Imagine his embarrassment and shame when a week after they got engaged, he calls up my brother and he says, I don't know how to say this, but she just broke it off. She said, I love you, but I can't do it. I can't see it. Now, not only do I have a broken engagement, but I may have lost the last girl on planet Earth who would marry a guy like me. And he fell into a deep depression. So God made it his business every single day to go to his house, hold on to his hand. They weren't close friends, but he was needed. And he sat there, he held his hand and said, it's my fault. I didn't make you a nice enough vart. You're gonna get remarried, and I'm gonna do your second vart much nicer. And he kept him going for months until he got re-engaged and married to the woman who is today his wife. And yes, he paid for the second vart. Someone came to his garage and they saw boxes of brand new dishes piled 8 high, 10 deep, 80 boxes of dishes. And they said, God, why do you have so many dishes? Did they have a sale or something? And God says, yeah, they did. So you had to buy all the dishes in the store? Yeah, I did. I don't understand. What are you going to do with 80 boxes of dishes? He said, oh, you know how sometimes people get inspired and they want to start doing kosher? But what stops them is, oh no, if I become kosher, I have to get all new dishes. So then they just don't. Now, when I hear someone is thinking of doing kosher, I run to my garage and I give him a box of dishes. Here are your dishes. That's giving. He just got it. There was a man who came to the shiva. I'm doing these rapid fire, but I want to do it justice. A man came to the shiva. And the man, I said, how did you know God? He said, I only met your brother for 5 minutes. I said, so what are you doing here paying your respects? He said, it changed my life. Tell me how. I began writing down the stories. So he said, you know, I was on an Eged bus in Israel, minding my own business, when all of a sudden this man comes up on the bus. It was your brother. I didn't know who he was. And we begin to schmooze, and after 2 minutes, he shakes my hand. He says, Shalom Aleichem. And I thought, wow, that's friendly. Shalom. And after schmoozing, he says to me, I have a question for you. What are you doing for the Jewish people? And I said, pardon me? What do you mean? What are you doing? He said to me, he said, you're good looking, you're tall, you're articulate, you're knowledgeable. You look like a leader. We need you. What are you doing for our people? We need leaders like you. Oh, it's my stop. Have a good day. And he bounces off the bus, and the rest of the day, his question is bouncing around in my brain. What are you doing for our people? And the next day, I signed up for a program called Arachim. And today I'm one of the head speakers for Arachim, which is like a Jewish outreach, all because of a 5-minute encounter with an idealistic young man who said, all hands on deck, we need everyone. This is a crazy story. A husband and wife, they come into the shiva and the wife collapsed on the floor, and I said to the husband, how did you know? God, you have to tell me the story. He said, oh, he saved our lives. What happened? He said, I was engaged to a non-Jewish girl, and I knew your brother was not happy. Obviously, But your brother had a very interesting way of dealing with it. He didn't come and wag his finger. No. One day I see him in the supermarket and he says, hey, why don't you come to me for Shabbos? Come to me. You know, I do a big meal Friday night. Yeah, I've been to the rabbi. I know what kind of meal he puts on. I'm very excited. I said, okay. And I come into his house that Friday night expecting to see a crowd. And I look around and there's no one but the rabbi and his family. Whoa, I'm the only guest? So for the first time, instead of mingling and schmoozing and socializing, instead he said, I looked around. And you know what I saw? I saw a husband and a wife who looked like a king and a queen. I saw little children who are dressed like princes and princesses. I smelled the challah and the chicken soup wafting through the air and the beautiful polished candlesticks in the middle. I saw the rabbi give a blessing and a kiss on each cheek to each one of his children, and then make a kiddush in that magnificent voice of his, and then take each of the children on his lap and ask them questions on the parsha. And I look at him and I blurt out, Rabbi, this is exactly what I want. And he says to me, but you're never going to have it, are you? Are you? And for the first time I realized what I was giving up by marrying this girl. And so I broke it off. But now I was lonely, and I called him a few weeks later and I said, Rabbi, at least then I was happy. Now I'm alone. The rabbi says, I know just the girl for you. And he matched me up with this amazing Jewish girl who was growing in her Judaism. And we got married, or we got engaged. We got engaged. But we didn't get married yet because we couldn't afford it. The rabbi said, no, get married. We can't afford it. Our parents aren't helping us. We're becoming religious. They don't like it. So Rav Gav says, don't worry about it. I got it. So he paid for our wedding. He paid for our entire wedding. But not only did he pay for our wedding, he was the Masada Kiddushin, he officiated, and he was the drummer in the band. And it was his band. He was a funky rabbi. He had a band. Very out there. At the end of the wedding, he was our wedding. At the end, I come over to him, I said, I'm so embarrassed, I'm ashamed, but I have no one else to go over to. So I'm coming over to you, please. Can I perhaps borrow $100? I shouldn't, but I want to rent a car, maybe stay in a hotel the first night. I'm embarrassed. You're the last person who I should go over to. He said, nonsense. Nonsense. I haven't given you your wedding present yet. And he had in his pocket prepared $1,000 in an envelope. He was very aware that this young man had nothing. I told this story in Philadelphia, and a lady comes over to me and says, that's nothing. He gave my son $5,000 for the wedding. Where did he have a lot of money from? He didn't, until the last year before he passed away. Because the last year before he passed away, he won the lottery. The big one. And I remember when he won it, because it was a bizarre phone call. He calls me up, and I hadn't heard from him in a while, and I said, Gav, how are you? I haven't heard from you in forever. Did you win the lottery or something? I never before and ever since have used that line, but in that phone call, I did. He said, yes, you heard? I said, heard what? He said, I won the lottery. I said, I don't get it. You play the lottery? You're not 65. Why do you play the lottery? He said, oh, when I came to South Africa, they have a thing that you could buy a subscription at the beginning of the year. They do this in Europe also. You get a subscription, and the computer picks it for you. And if you win, they let you know. And yesterday, this guy comes to my house with a big oversized check. Congratulations, he won. It took him a full day to prove to me he wasn't a hoax. What did he do with the money? Simple. He divided it between his siblings. He gave every school that he and his wife ever went to. And he said the only money that he selfishly spent was on a used Toyota and a killer drum set. These are not the well-known stories. I'm going to tell you now the famous stories. There's quick, we're almost done. These are the ones that are published. And these are so bizarre. But I wanted to give you a taste and I'm doing this in memory of Gabriel Eliyahu. Gabriel was once walking in Kruger National Park. It is the safari in South Africa, and he was walking together with a famous speaker by the name of Rabbi Mordechai Becher. Rabbi Becher is a famous speaker, and he was coming as a guest lecturer in Johannesburg. And Gabriel, he was very interesting. When he had rabbis come to visit him, he didn't treat them like rabbis because he knew that rabbis just want to have fun. So what he did was, the rabbis would come and he would bring them to funky things like Zulu dances, things, a rabbi with a beard watching a Zulu dance, it makes for a great picture. So he went to Rabbi Becher and said to Rabbi Becher, hey, you want to come to a safari? Rabbi Becher says, sure, I'd love to come. So they go to a safari, and as they're walking in the area where they were able to walk, Gav sees two Afrikaners sitting on a rock. Now, what's an Afrikaner? Afrikaners are those white South Africans from Dutch descent. They're the ones who kept apartheid going for so long. They don't like blacks, and they don't like Jews. And they can be quite dangerous. And Gav turns to Rabbi Becher and sees these two guys and says, hey, maybe one of them is Jewish. Let's go over to them. And the Rabbi Becher says, no, they're Afrikaners and they'll kill us. But Gav, once he made up his mind, that was it. So he marches over to them and says, pardon me, are either of you guys Jewish? These very tough-looking Afrikaners, they look at him. They're not sure what to say. They say, no, neither of you are Jewish? One of them says, well, technically I am. So his Afrikaner friend was shocked. Well, my friend's a Jew. Technically, my mother's mother was Jewish, so you may consider me a Jew. I don't consider myself a Jew. God was so excited. Wow, he found a Jew in Kruger National Park. He says to him, do you do anything Jewish? No. Really? Shabbat? No. Yom Kippur? No. Hanukkah? No. Passover? No. So God looks at him with those sad eyes and says, I never met a Jew who didn't do one thing Jewish. So I guess the guy felt a little bad for my brother. So he says, okay, I do one thing Jewish. What do you do? Well, when the Intifada started in Israel, I wanted to know, why does everyone hate the Jews? So I went online, began to Google it, and I found a website and asked the rabbi website. So I asked the rabbi why, and he gave me an answer. And we've actually been going back and forth with Jewish questions for about 6 months. So just then Rabbi Becher walked around my brother, looks to the guy and says, would you be Jonathan? And the guy says, are you Rabbi Becher? From Sague, New Jersey to Kruger National Park in Afrikaner, they had been pen pals for 6 months. And that story got published in a book called Small Miracles. Another story. Gav is walking in a shopping mall, and he's walking with a student, and the student says to him, Rabbi, wherever you go, Jews come to you. How do you do it? Like you're a Jew magnet. He says, I'm not a Jew magnet. It's just because Jewish people, we're magnetic to each other. We love each other. He says, watch, I'll show you. And he goes to the musical instrument store in the mall. And he says to the fellow, do you mind if I play on your drums? And the guy says, can you play? The guy was like, I can play a little. He was a massive drummer. And he takes the drumsticks and he begins to drum first a simple beat, and then it gets more complicated, and soon he is just hammering away with an incredibly complicated beat on the drums. And people, when they hear the drums, they think, hey, free concert in the mall. And so they begin to pile in to the musical instrument store. And the more people who came, and soon the whole store was full. And God does not even look up. He's just hammering away on the drums. And when he's finished, he stands up. Everyone claps for him. What a virtuoso performance. God looks at everyone and says, hiya, everyone. And they say, hiya back. And he says to them, my name is Rabbi Klatzko. Is anyone here Jewish? And about 15 people raised their hand, because this is Joburg, there's a lot of Jews. About 15 people raised their hand. And he says, well, congratulations, you have each just won a free Shabbat meal. And he had with him these pre-printed cards that said, you have won a free Shabbat meal. You've won a free Shabbat meal, and you've won a free Shabbat meal, and he gives out the free Shabbat meal cards, and he takes their name and number, and he had a bunch of them over for Shabbat. Instant connection to Jews. Last two stories. This is crazy. Gav is walking with a student once, and they pass an Afrikaner biker bar. Now, if you can imagine, two random Afrikaners are scary. Imagine when they're bikers and they're drunk, and it's their bar. And the student, just for a joke, he says, Rabbi, I wonder if there are like any Jews in that bar, and no one's ever going to meet them because they're in an Afrikaner bar. And Gav says, you're right. Let's go in. And the guy says, no. It's like walking into a Nazi bar with a yarmulke. No. Guys, we're going in. And he walks right into the bar. And the first thing he does is he goes over to the bartender and says, I'd like to buy everyone in the bar around on me. Clever. And he buys everyone around. They get these little schnapps in front of them, little vodka. And then he goes over to the first table and he knocks his hand on the table and says, pardon me, fellas, pardon me. Is anyone here Jewish? And these guys, they are like gorillas. They've got studs in every orifice of their body. They've got the tattoos with the mom with the skull and crossbones on their biceps, and they don't know whether to laugh or kill him. Anyone Jewish? No Jews? Okay. Cheers, fellas. Goes to the next table. Pardon me, is anyone here Jewish? No. Next table. Anyone here Jewish? Finally, he gets up to the last table and says, pardon me, is anyone here Jewish? And this huge guy, a mountain of a man, he puts his hand in his shirt and he takes out a Star of David. And he says, I am Jewish, and this whole table here is Jewish. He says, you're all Jewish? Who are you? He says, we are the Jewish biker gang of Johannesburg. God says, we have our own biker gang? Cool. He says, what are you doing in an Afrikaner biker bar? And this guy says, because no one tells a Jew where to drink. They're looking for a fight, basically. So God says, listen up, folks. There's a Johnny Walker party at my house tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Who's coming? They said, free booze, Rabbi? Absolutely free. 8 o'clock, here's my address. He takes out his cards. Here's my address you guys are going to show. Rabbi, if there's free booze, we're all going to be there. There better be free booze. Better not be a trick. God says, don't worry. The next day, down quiet little sunny road, comes a motorcycle train. You've got the motorcycles and Yamahas and Harleys, and all the neighbors are looking out their window shades. What's going on at the rabbi's house? Something funky. All these motorcycle gang just pulled up to the rabbi. This is scary. And when God sees them, right away he takes a table and he puts it next to his front door. And they come in. And as they come in, he says, fellas, come on in, come in. Please just put your weapons on the table and come in. Just weapons there and come in. They weren't thrilled, but from out of their pockets came an entire arsenal. Gun after gun, 9mm, magnums, 22s, switchblades, brass knuckles, a mountain, like they're going to war. South Africa's a dangerous place. If you live in South Africa, you don't live behind barbed wire. You live behind electrified barbed wire. It's a scary place to live. But God invites these bikers in, and he pours them each a cup of Johnny Walker. He says, guys, you know what l'chaim is? Sure, we're Jewish. L'chaim. And he begins to knock down shots with the bikers. One shot after the next, after the next. And after about an hour, he reaches back to his bookshelf, takes out a chumash, says, fellas, would it be okay with you if I shared with you a beautiful idea? And they said, sure, Rabbi, go for it, go ahead. And thus began the Jewish biker gang Shir of Johannesburg. that met to study Torah weekly with their new rabbi. When God passed away, that first biker, that mountain of a man, in memory of my brother and in his merit, left South Africa, moved to Israel, went to yeshiva. His name was Abi. And instead of being a biker, he became an artist, painting little Hasidic men. And recently he moved back to Baltimore. Last story. You know, when somebody passes away, I was told there are 2 times that are the most painful. One time we all know, that's at the funeral. At the funeral, the body's there, but the soul is gone, so it's them, but it's not them. I actually had not seen my brother in many weeks because he was in Johannesburg and I was in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. And standing there in front of him without having said goodbye, and it was really weeks since we spoke, no excuses. It's unfortunate, that's how it is when families get big and there was no WhatsApp in those days. Just separates. It's awful. I even remember when the Chevra Kadisha took his body and wanted to lower it into the ground. And there was one moment where they had to unwrap it. And they said, everyone please turn your faces away. You're not supposed to look at the person as they passed away. It's covered on mace. There's nothing that I wanted to do more in my life than to look and say goodbye, but I didn't. But the other time that's incredibly painful, I was not aware of. I was not aware of how painful it was, but I'm going to share with you because something amazing happened. You see, after the Levi is the Shiva, and the Shiva is a cocoon. The Shiva protects you. Those of you that have been through Shiva, you're aware people come and they serve you food, and you reminisce on the life of the departed. You reminisce on their dash. It's called the dash. When you look at a tombstone, a matzeva, date of birth, date of death, and a dash in between. The dash is their life. Their life is called the dash. That represents all of their actions. But then, at the end of the Shiva, there's a custom, there's a minhag, and I hope that you shouldn't find out about this for many years. But the minhag is that you walk around the block to signify exiting Shiva and entering the next stage of mourning, the lighter mourning, going on with life. And I was told that that walk around the block is incredibly painful. And I didn't understand it until it happened, and I'm going to tell you what happened. It was the last day. We had davened. We had eaten breakfast. And my father looks at me and says, it's time to walk around the block. Shiva is over. And I got up, myself, my 2 remaining brothers. We went outside. We were mourning in Yerushalayim. It was a very hot day. The streets were deserted. Parents were at work, kids were at school. Quiet streets. And when you walk, the family walks together, and others can walk, but they don't walk with you. They give you space. They're 15, 20 feet behind you. And you walk and you don't talk. You just feel the moment. You feel the nifta, you feel their neshama. And as I walked, I heard my footsteps on the pavement, and I thought, I'm not ready. I just found out that I never knew anything about him. I just spent 7 days hearing that my brother was a tzaddik, and I only told you a drop of a drop of a drop. I could have gone on all night. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even know him. And it was such an awful feeling. And just hearing those footsteps, and I'm thinking, I'm not ready to leave Shiva. I turned to see how my father's holding up. My father's an emergency room doctor. I figure he'll be our strength. He'll be our pillar. I looked at him, and he was in pieces. I later on found out that parents never fully recover from the death of a child. My mother would say that sometimes she wakes up in the middle of the night to find my father sitting at the foot of the bed with his face in his hands crying. Now, as we walked, I kept thinking, this is not okay. We were supposed to be at each other's children's weddings. We're supposed to grow old and gray together. Why? How could this have happened? And as I'm walking around the block, it felt like I was walking down the stairs to a very dark and scary place that I'm not going to be able to escape from. And when we finished our walk, and I was emotionally very depleted, it got worse. Because the almana, the widow, was just beginning her walk. She was waiting for my mother. My mother did not walk with us because the community was afraid she'd be too fragile and she may collapse in the street. So they waited until there were people to hold her up. And I look at this almana, this widow. She's 26 years old. My brother left 4 children who would not remember their father. They'd be in therapy for many years. They'd hear stories and read books and be jealous of everyone who knew their father but them. And I'm thinking, how in the world is this 26-year-old woman with 4 kids going to put the pieces of her life back together? This person who treated her like a queen. I walk in the house and I said to myself, I don't want anyone saying anything to me. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Don't tell me how time heals all wounds. Don't say anything. I can't take it. I'm just thinking, no, I don't want to hear. I walk into the dining room and there's a young man who's sitting on a stool, very handsome, wearing a beautiful long jacket. And as we come in, he doesn't say anything to us, but he begins to sing a song. And I need you to feel the moment. So I'm going to sing to you what he's saying. We walk in the room, and as we walk in, he looks at us, and he sings the words from Tisha B'Av. Nachamu, nachamu, ami, yomar Elokeichem. Be comforted, my nation. So says Hashem. Be comforted. And as he's singing that, I knew just what to do, and so did my brothers. We took chairs and we sat down next to him, and we just began to sing. We just sang. We got up to the second part of the song. Dabru alei Yerushalayim, v'ki yiru eileho. Dabru alei Yerushalayim, v'ki yiru eileho. Speak to the heart of Yerushalayim. Call out to her. She has a Tisha B'Av. Now you have a Tisha B'Av. Give each other comfort. And we sat and we sang together over the loss of this great man who was cut down in his youth. And after about 15 minutes of singing, I jump up and I gave this young man a hug. And I said, who are you? How did you know to do that? Of all things that anyone would have done, everything would have been wrong. But what you just did was so right. You gave our family comfort. Who are you? And how did you know to do that? He says to me, my name is Sheftel. And I loved your brother. He was my brother. We were so close. He was literally like my flesh and blood. And about a year ago, I got engaged. And I was the happiest person on earth. You know, you wait all your life to find that perfect person, and you suspect you're going to have to settle. I didn't settle. I got an angel. I married a queen, a princess. Her midos, her charm, her beauty, her chen. I was the happiest person in the world. And then we got married in the courtyard of the great synagogue, underneath the beautiful and holy Jerusalem stars. And then we settled in an apartment in Yerushalayim, and I began to study, I began to learn. And after about 30 days. I come home one day and I see that my wife is sprawled out on the kitchen floor and she's unconscious. She's unconscious. I called Magen David Adom. I called the paramedics, says Sheftel, and they took my wife of 30 days away. They took her away, and I was in the hospital, and God came to visit me, and he held on to my hand, but she never woke up, and I lost my wife. After 30 days, you wait all your life, and all you have is 30 days. I was so gone. And during the Levaya, I felt like I was being stabbed again and again. I was in so much pain. And during the Shiva, everything that everyone said, I was numb. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And then the end of Shiva, I began my walk. I remember my walk clearly. I remember hearing my footsteps on the pavement. I remember feeling like this is the end. This is the end. You have one shot, and that's it. And I lost my beloved. And when I came back into the house, at the lowest place that anyone could be in their entire lives, I walked back in the house. And there, sitting on a stool, is your brother Rav Gav singing this song for me. I learned it from him. I learned it from him. That's where I learned who to give comfort from. A year ago, I sat where you were sitting, and it was Rav Gav on the stool, and he sang Nachamu, Nachamu, just like I just sang. And after we sang, he jumped up and he said, Sheftel, my Sheftel, you know how much I love you? No one's going to understand your pain. No one can understand what it's like to be married and to lose your beloved so quickly. You'll never forget her. She was amazing. But I want to tell you something as your friend. You will continue with life. You will be strong. You will get remarried. And I even know what I'm going to buy you for your wedding present. I'm going to buy you a tishbekisha, a beautiful thing to wear for Shabbos. And you're going to build a family. You're going to find love. And here I am a year later, sitting and singing this exact same song for God himself, wearing the jacket, the tishbekisha he bought me last week after I got married to my beautiful new wife underneath the Holy Jerusalem stars. We all want to believe that we're givers. But we don't realize how many people in our lives need our giving. There are so many people that need us. There are so many people that if we just picked up the phone to call them, it would change everything. If we are lucky enough to have parents to pick up the phone once a week to say good Shabbos. If we're lucky enough to have grandparents. If we have a best friend, let the best friend know you don't take them for granted. So many people need it. Yocheved remained a widow for 5 years. And then she got remarried to a wonderful, wonderful person named Paul Bacher. Who was Paul? Paul was one of my brother's students. So when he taught his student, he was basically training the future father of his children. And by his oldest daughter's wedding, children named Gabriel from all across the country flew in and made a choir of the Gabriels. You could see it on YouTube, all the Gabriels from big to small. And they sang, Vizakeni legadol banim nevanim. Let us be worthy of raising children and grandchildren. And you could see on the video, the Kala pointing towards them and turning to her chas and saying, look, they're all named after my father. She said, Daddy, I miss you so much. I hope you're having a beautiful dance with Hashem and Shamayim. So I miss you down here. I finished with the following words. Gav used to write little poems to himself. They weren't meant to be read. They were just meant for him to remind himself about what's important. But after he passed away, people found them and published some of them. And this was the first one that was published. Just a reminder to himself. He wrote, time starts to slip away. Do we wait until that day? Do we shape ourselves in advance, shaping our lives, leaving nothing to chance? Are we confident to truly take stock, or will our reflection leave us in shock? Will we continue the same as before, or will we grow and strive for more? Let us not wait for time to run out. Let us start thinking what life is about. Let us grow, let us strive, let us learn how to live. And greatest of all, let us learn how to give. It wasn't natural. He taught himself, he trained himself that it's all about giving. And I'm going to put in my own plug, since you're all sitting here for the longest speech you've ever sat by. I have a website, Shabbat.com. If you don't know about it, please learn about it. If you're a member of it, please be active. I used to be self-conscious sharing this, but it's nuts. It's crazy not to share it, because we have 100,000 members, and every week between 5,000 and 10,000 are looking for a place for Shabbos. We filled up our Shabbos with people who need it. Divorcees, widows, Baalei Tshuva, kids who are OTD or are considering leaving the derech, kids who want to come back. How could it be that a Jewish home doesn't have a guest for Shabbos? It's not possible. In today's day and age, we go online for Amazon to buy goods. We go online to eBay. Why aren't we going to invite guests? And we make shidduchim. Why aren't we making more shidduchim? Just this Sunday, today, I woke up and I got two emails. One email from a young lady in Brazil. She said, I just met someone on the site and I'm engaged. And another young man named Yoni, he said, Rabbi, I just wanted to say thank you. Both me and my sister found our spouses on Shabbat.com. That's just this morning, 3 engagements. You don't have to say thank you. I want you to do 2 things. Number 1, I put all my money towards it, and I don't have money for advertising. So how do I have to advertise? It's you. It's you spreading the mitzvah. Great Neck should be known, if you're from Great Neck should be known as the place of Achnasat Orchim. How could it be that even one Jew doesn't have a place for Shabbos? How could it be that even one Jew has to be Mechalel Shabbat because we can't give a piece of chicken, or we can't go online and just click, come. Lo shayach. It's madness. Hashem gave us a gift. The gift is called Shabbat.com. It's a gift. It's a social network. It's the only one like it in the world. Even other religions don't have it. Use it. It's a matana to the Jewish people to have guests and for shidduchim. And the second thing, there are a lot of good causes here, so I'm going to put in for our cause. I have to raise 20 grand a month to keep this mitzvah going. It's incredibly expensive. So if you want a part of my mitzvah, you can go on and click donate. It will help me. Last time I spoke for an event, just want to tell you, this changed my life. A person came over to me and says, Rabbi, I want to do something big. I said, I need help with the app. He says, I got the app. Today, thousands of people find shidduchim, chevrusas, Shabbos through that app. And this person signed the check to go to Olam Haba. It was that simple. That simple. You have great opportunities. So if you don't have a lot, go on, give a little bit of maaseh, chazak, you should give to chazak, give to Torah anytime. These are all worthy causes. I'm mentioning to you Shabbat.com because I have to personally fundraise. And if you want to go big, you can come to me. It's not easy, but we need to bring Mashiach. Enough is enough is enough. Hashem gave us technology in order to bring Mashiach. This is technology, this shiur, and that's another technology, that's Shabbat.com. Thank you very much.